Hello, friends, and welcome to the Exploring Washington State podcast. My name is Scott Cowan, and I'm the host of the show. Each episode, I have a conversation with an interesting guest who is living in or from Washington State. These are casual conversations with real and interesting people. I think you're going to like the show. So let's jump right in with today's guest. My guest today is Molly Hashimoto. Molly, thank you for taking the time to sit down with me. And what brought us together was your publisher, Mount Rainier Press. And they sent me a copy of your book. As I'm holding it up, not that anyone's going to see this, but Trees of the West, an Artist's Guide. Lovely book. So this was not your first book, correct?
No, there were 3 previous ones also published by Mountaineers Books.
Well, let's go backwards then for a second. You're an artist primarily, right? Is that would that be your identifier as an artist?
Yes, my whole career, pretty much that's my identifier, but I have always been a book person, and I can elaborate a little bit about that for you if you like, but I don't. Okay. Well, when I went to college and graduate school, I was an English major, so I did a lot of writing, and I love writing. But art was in high school, I really wanted to be an artist, but I got some encouragement from my writing, so I went down that path, but I never stopped doing art. And then after graduate school, like many English majors, I went, what am I going to do now?
I shouldn't laugh, but yes, that's yes.
That's right. So I worked at Elliott Bay Books for many years, and I was the children's book, poster, calendar, card buyer, after I'd been there for a while. And that put me in touch with Pomegranate Communications. And they were at the time out of California. Now they've moved up to Portland, but they are a worldwide art publisher. And they began to publish my work. So I had, a little bit of success at the beginning, but mostly was just working as an artist and teacher. Did a lot of teaching, which I really love. So I travel around the West, have done so for many, many years. And I started keeping notebooks of some of the places I went. And I've hiked my whole life. So the trees, all of the books were just a natural outgrowth of the hiking. And that's pretty much sums it up.
Well, let me ask you this. So, I'm going to paint a picture out of my imagination now, is that you were out hiking one day and you probably took some of your art supplies with you, and you were out there just, I don't want to say doodling, but, sketching things out and all. When did you get the inspiration to say, I want to do a book?
I was at Yellowstone many years ago, and I went into the Albright Visitor Center at Mammoth Hot Springs, and I saw reproductions of Thomas Moran's watercolor sketches. And I was really inspired. His watercolors are so much fresher, and they make you feel that you were right there with him. And I thought, well, he was a great artist, but I want to try this too. And I'd always been real inspired by all these places and the history of them. And I read a lot of books about them. So that, I think, is where I started to develop the idea for a book.
And did you pitch this to was Mountaineers your first publisher? I guess I better.
Well, no. Years ago, I'd done a children's book for Sasquatch Books, and at the time, I met Andy Pugh, who worked there as in various roles, and didn't work there any longer when I ran into her, and she said, "What are you doing now?" And I said, "Well, I'm working on, a bunch of sketchbooks and writing about my visits to these beautiful national parks and monuments." And she said, "Let me see it." Well, she is a literary agent now, has been for a long time, and she had good connections to Mountaineers Books. So Anne said, "I think you've got a book here. I think we should work together, and we should pitch it to the Mountaineers Books editor." So that's how that came about.
All right. I always, whenever I talk to authors, I think it's interesting to hear everybody's story about how they how the book found them in some cases, you know, it was just the book that had to be written, or what their events were that led them up to, you know, saying, I'm, you know, here, I put this together, and then pitching it. And normally I ask this question later on in the episodes of authors. And I think today I'm going to get it to the beginning, because I think it's a fun question. What do you remember of the first time you saw your book in public, and where was that?
I think that I may have first seen it at University Bookstore.
Okay.
And it was just thrilling, absolutely thrilling. I couldn't believe it. Yeah, it was very exciting. But, you know, I think even more exciting than that was when the editor-in-chief of Mountaineers Books, Kate Rogers, said yes to the book and issued me a contract. And that, I think, was the most thrilling thing of all, because I couldn't believe it.
Well, that's exciting. I mean, we'll come back to that in a second.
Sure.
So what I think is, so the first time I asked an author this question, and maybe it's because it was the first time I asked the question of somebody, and their response totally took me off guard.
Yeah.
This is a Seattle author. He's written 3 books now on Seattle history, kind of the Prohibition era. So I asked him, I said, so where did you first see, you know, where were you when you first saw your book, you know, in public? And his answer was, it was on the shelves at Bartell Drugs.
Oh, that's
And he goes,
great.
I'm in my local Bartell's Drugs, and there's my book. And I just thought, yes, Bartell's has, you know, I haven't been into Bartell's in a number of years, but I remember them having kind of a local curated section of books. But what an interesting place to see your work in a drugstore. So you saw yours at University Bookstore, which is, you know, boy, it's been years since I've been in there. I always remember that as being a really impressive store to walk through and look at all the things that they were carrying and all of that. So I can imagine that it would have been pretty awe-inspiring for you to see your book there. But let's go back, because you said something that no one else has said, is when the editor-in-chief said yes. Walk me through that. I mean, well, didn't you kind of think they were going to say yes? I mean,
no, not really. I believed in what I was doing, but you know that these editors have slush piles, you know, a mile high. And
okay.
So, and I was in the book business too, you know,
Okay.
years ago. So I kind of know what that world is about. And it's really difficult. It's like pushing a needle through finding a needle through in a haystack. So
right.
That was a real thrill. And the other thing, Scott, that's interesting is the Mountaineers do a fabulous job of editing, and the editing process on a book is pretty intensive and pretty long. So in a way, you know, once you've gone through that process, you know the book, it exists. It really exists. And you see the proofs, and I had to look at color proofs. And so its existence was assured. You know what I mean?
Yeah. All right. That's okay. When you say it like that, that makes sense. So your first book, how long from when they said yes to when it was released, how long was that process?
You know, that's a really good question, Scott. And I can't remember exactly, but I think that I turned that out really quickly. I mean, I think it was something like, okay, I worked on it for a year. I had a year, but that's because I'd already created these sketches years ago, you know, and I'd been writing. So that wasn't such a tight deadline. And then I think the editorial process took about a year.
Okay. So on Trees of the West, so here's a question for you. And like I mentioned earlier, you know, Mountaineers has been great, because they when there's an author that overlaps with what our audience is about, they oftentimes reach out and say, hey, you should talk to Molly. And then maybe they reach out to you and go, hey, I'm going to make you talk to this guy. I'm sorry, but you're going to do it. No, I'm just kidding. The goal is Mountaineers has been a great source of authors to have conversations with. And they send me, and typically they send me a copy of the book. Most of the books that Mountaineers has sent me has been paperback. Yours is a hardback.
Mm-hmm.
What was the decision, and how did you guys decide, or who decided, and what was the reasoning why this was a hardback?
Yeah, I think marketing and editorial gets together to make these decisions, but I think that the major thought behind it was that, with the exception of Birds of the West, which came out in the spring,
Mm-hmm.
all of them came out in the fall, and that is a major time to buy gifts for people. And a beautiful hardcover book, they get great prices on these. They're non-expensive, and it's a perfect gift for people who like nature, art, the outdoors. Yeah,
Well, and I had never thought about it in those terms, but it's so glaringly obvious when you say if it comes out in fall, holiday gift giving, a
right.
hardback book is um, a beautiful gift to give somebody.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. I was actually kind of hoping for some big story, like, you guys had to arm wrestle or something, but no, I kid. Um, how long did Trees of the West take you? And I'm going to guess that from what we've said is that you probably some of the artwork that's in it was already had been done, or did you start fresh with a blank slate, if you will, when you
No,
just
there was no blank slate. I had a lot of paintings and block prints of trees. I've been obsessed with them ever since I moved to Washington when in my 20s. So yeah, over many, many years, I'd done a lot. So I believe that that process was only a year, which
okay,
is sounds crazy, but just the work had been done in many cases.
okay. So you moved to Washington in your 20s. Where did you go to college at?
I went to the University of Minnesota and went to graduate school at the University of Chicago, and met my husband at the time there at the University of Chicago, and we moved back to Seattle where he was from.
Okay, I can't imagine why anybody would leave Minnesota or Illinois. I mean, winters there are just lovely. Oh, I love Chicago. I think the city of Chicago is probably my favorite U.S. city. And here I am,
Mhm.
the host of Exploring Washington State. But I love the city of Chicago. I think the architecture is fabulous. I'm going to guess, I can't believe we're talking about something other than Washington, but have you ever taken the architectural boat tour?
I didn't take the architectural boat tour, but I'll tell you, I went on the Frank Lloyd Wright tour of Oak Park. Wonderful. And then I did a tour. I think the guy's name is Henry Hobson Richardson. These beautiful turn of the century, 19th to 20th century buildings. And so, yeah, but I've always wanted to try that boat tour.
So, it's very touristy, if and I went back and we took it kind of, it was a group of us there and we decided to take it. I didn't really have any, um, I enjoy architecture, but I didn't really have any expectations. That boat tour was really, really wonderful.
Hmm.
If you go back to Chicago and the weather cooperates, yeah, I'm not saying you should take it in December, but, springtime would be lovely to take it.
Mhm, mhm.
So you moved out here, and then, and so you've lived in Seattle for a number of years now, or in the Seattle area. Did
Mhm.
you always live in the Seattle area, or have you
Yeah,
lived? Okay,
yeah. No, 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 nowhere else.
nowhere else. So
Mhm,
things have changed in Seattle in the years that have,
mhm,
and
mhm.
I I used to live in Seattle a long time ago, and we moved over here to avoid traffic. I got burned out on traffic. I was commuting
Mhm.
28 miles each way to work every day, and
Yeah.
not to Seattle. I was going actually down to Olympia from the Tacoma area, and just
Mhm.
couldn't take it anymore. So you brought up something I wasn't prepared for, and that's Elliott Bay Books.
Mhm.
Um, wonderful, wonderful bookstore. Loved going there. Um, were you working there when it became part of Third Place Books?
No, no, I left long before that,
Yeah,
but incidentally, I just attended in July their 50th anniversary party because some of the longtime folks, people they'd remembered from the past got invited, and it was just quite delightful. I had
yeah,
a great time.
yeah. I love that bookstore as a. It's only been open 50 years, because could have sworn I went there as a kid, and that would have been more than 50 years ago. Huh. Fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
So you work there, and your art is available. You have art for sale and all these things. I'm bouncing around because I'm trying to figure out where I want to go with this. You are a full-time artist, correct? That's
Correct. Mm-hmm.
so what was that like to go and make that jump?
Um, well, I did it my whole life, and I
Mm-hmm.
took a few years off when I had two children, and I took care of them for a few years. So,
Okay.
I squeezed in some art time even then.
Right.
And then, I had some little part-time jobs, but then I got into teaching art and I really loved it. And that helped me make money. So
Right.
the teaching, most artists, writers, and musicians, they must teach. And, it really helps if you love it, which I do.
Oh, you're not wrong there. You're not wrong.
That's right.
I have a lot of friends who are musicians, and they're not doing it for the money. That's for sure. Or if they are, they're very thin. They're very thin. But you enjoy teaching. So some of my musician friends don't enjoy that. So that cuts down on their opportunities. But you enjoy teaching. What is it about the teaching process that inspires you and that you enjoy?
Um, well, here's an example. I just got back from the Oregon coast. There's a wonderful organization called Sitka Center for Art and Ecology, and I did 3 classes for them. And part of what I love about teaching is the preparation, because I have to think really clearly and organize myself to present information to people.
Mm-hmm.
And I like to really go through a lot of material and give people lots of ideas for them to try out and then take away. And when I see, especially a beginner, do something that they feel really successful at, it just totally makes my day. I don't know. I just find it really gratifying. And a lot of really great musicians, they consider teaching part of the work they do. Passing along information to
Mm-hmm.
younger people, or not necessarily younger people, but yeah, I think it's really important. I don't really like being holed up in my studio, which is in my house, by the way. I don't like being holed up there all the time. I like getting out and meeting people.
Okay. All right. This last set of classes that you taught, what were you giving instruction on?
Um, Two of them were trees of the West, and then one of them was a special focus on the Sitka spruce, which is our coastal tree, which down on the Oregon coast and the Washington coast, it achieves a massive, massive size, and it's just a real fun kick to try to paint it and draw it. We had a great time.
And how many approximately how many people attended these?
Each class had 12 students, and they keep it limited. It's a
Mhm.
very high quality art experience, and it's neat to be surrounded by the forest. It was really cool. On the last day of the last class, I heard these Stellar's jays making a big, big commotion, and I knew there had to be a hawk,
Mm-hmm.
eagle, or owl nearby. So we walked up the steps behind the classroom, and I lucked out and spotted a great horned owl. And it was just so fun.
Wow.
We were all just thrilled to see it. Anyway, that's what's cool about that place. You're not in the city in some art studio. You're
Right.
out there where you're going to see things that are really wonderful and not available to people in cities.
I enjoy art, but I have an uneducated vocabulary. Okay.
Mhm.
I can say I like something, and then if you ask me to or explain to you why, I become very, I'll stumble over my words greatly.
Mhm.
But I am on your, I'm looking at some of your note cards, jigsaw puzzles, and all that have your artwork on them. And I love the idea of jigsaw puzzles as a way of bringing art to the dining room table, literally. I mean,
Mhm.
and I really enjoy the style, but I don't know how to articulate it. So I'm looking at your right now. I'll just click on this link. I am looking at your birds, the 2024 wall calendar.
Mm-hmm.
Help me out here. Show pity on me.
Mm-hmm.
Can you, how should I describe this art from a technical standpoint, if you will? Not, I like it because it seems like it has, bold lines isn't the right way of putting it, but yeah, help me out here because
Yeah,
I'm really struggling.
well,
Help me out.
Scott, that's interesting because the block prints, which is what that is, they really do affect people in a rather different way than, say, looking at a watercolor.
Mm-hmm.
I think you get this immediate impact, like, wow, that is a bird, and those are flowers, and
Right.
it's an exciting world where everything is vibrant and full of energy, and maybe that's why you like it. I know they've been popular for pomegranate, and people buy them from me a lot. There's something about the medium that really hits people. And, my analysis of it is that the best ones use a lot of primary colors,
Okay.
bright or even secondary colors. And the black, the white, and the color that's the kind of thing that that's the first thing that a child gravitates to. As people get older, they, sometimes they become more subtle in their tastes. But I've never I can be subtle, but I also like the things that children like. So, and I think that's true for a lot of people.
So somehow my brain processed that you just called me a child. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm teasing you. Do not take me seriously.
Well, wait, Scott, but wait. I think that it's great that people still find a child in themselves. That sounds maybe a little corny, but really, I think I've tried to explain why I like the block prints for birds and butterflies and animals. And it's because when you see a bird, you feel a thrill. It's thrilling. And, a watercolor has a different impact on people. It's not thrilling necessarily.
Thank you for saying that because as I was thumbing through your book, I enjoy the watercolors. It's not that I don't like them, but I found the block prints to be what were catching my eye. Like I was being drawn to those. So, because I know nothing about this process at all, can you walk me through?
Sure.
I'm looking at the, I believe it's a quail. It's the cover of the 20. Okay. I have dozens of them and they block my driveway whenever I try to leave. All the little,
right. Over in Wenatchee, of course.
lots. I mean,
got
they're
lots.
like so many of them. And they never look like this, by the way. I mean, they're always standing in the middle of my road and I'm a kid. And my dog just is fascinated by that.
Of course.
So can you walk me through how do you create that? I mean, what's going on there?
Well, I'll give you the full process.
Okay.
I happened to see that quail here in Seattle. Long ago, they were at Magnuson Park, which is pretty close to my house.
Okay.
And I took a picture of it. Beautiful bird standing on a log. Great pose. So I thought, I really want to do a print with that. But I don't want to put it in Magnuson Park in Seattle. I want to put it where people identify this bird, California quail and, poppy. So I started thinking how neat it would look with a bunch of poppies and a hillside, a California hillside covered in poppies. And so I did a thumbnail sketch, nothing too big. And I thought, yeah, this could work. So then I developed the drawing. Once I had the drawing the way I wanted, I put it on a block. And then I used carving tools to carve out the raised lines that you see that are black. Everything that is black has not been carved out, okay? That is called a relief print. So the black lines are in relief. Sounds a little complicated. You kind of almost have to see it, but then you print it. And you can do it in a press or you can do it by hand. I do them by hand. I just use a spoon. I put the printmaking paper on top of the print, press down really hard. If you've ever done a rubber stamp, it's pretty much the same process.
Okay.
And then I use an oil-based ink so that then I can use watercolor on the non-black areas of it.
You had said that the blocks are all the same size. So what was that size?
8 by 10.
8 by 10.
Mm-hmm. And one of the reasons I do that is if I do things, in odd sizes or anything other than what I have figured out how to frame, it begins to cost a whole lot of money.
Okay.
Framing. You've probably framed some stuff, custom frames, very expensive. So anyway, I've got it figured out so that I don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. So
Okay.
that's good. That's good. I've got kind of a little production going.
Whenever I ask an artist this question, sometimes I get in the weeds of technical, but how long does it take you to carve out a print like that?
Well, let's just say I was going to start the thing in a day. I could probably do an entire print in about 7 hours.
Oh, okay. That's
Not
not as
that
long as I
long.
was expecting, actually.
No, not that long.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, so on these, if you were to press them, are you making just one copy, or how replicatable is this process?
Well, that's a very good question. Typically, I'll do about 3 at a time. I don't want to do a full edition. Most of my editions are 25, but the problem is, you might do a print and not find anybody interested in it. And I don't want to have a whole closet full of prints. That's, wasteful and it's expensive. So I'll do 3 at a time. And because I can do watercolor pretty predictably, I can make them look very similar from print to print. But obviously, since it's all hand done, there's going to be some variation. And actually, even a machine, something done on a professional press, you're going to have some variation between prints.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if I were to purchase this as an original, you would do a run of 25. Would be the goal for you.
Yeah, this particular print, the California quail, I did 50. Okay. I anticipated 50 of that because I knew that people liked it. And once I run out of an edition, that's it. There aren't any more, and I can't make another one. So
why can't you make another one? You've got the block. Or do you destroy the blocks?
No, I don't destroy them. And it's true that, a lot of Japanese prints they can still be produced now, but it's not actually fair to the people who bought the print thinking they were buying a limited edition print. That's how I see it.
No, I agree with you. I do. I agree with you. I've seen a lot of like poster makers will do, limited edition, say 1 of 100.
Right.
And then they'll re-release it without numbers on it. And
exactly. That's right.
Or like behind me is a proof of something. And
oh yeah. I see a guy with sunglasses and a poster behind you.
That's
he looks familiar.
Yeah, it is a map of Seattle with a silk screen of Tony Bourdain over it.
Oh yeah.
So everything that's in that back wall has something to do with Washington in one way or another.
Oh, neat.
And where Anthony Bourdain comes in is I actually chauffeured him from Portland to Seattle one time.
Oh, but what fun!
It was a memorable experience. And then he gifted my daughter and I tickets to his event at the Paramount Theater. And I won Father of the Century, not just the year, the century, for taking my daughter to that.
I bet.
Something we still talk about 10 years later, actually.
Neat.
More than 10 years now. So I see poster makers that's kind of had their way around it. They'll sell, a limited edition of X, and then they'll reproduce it in a mass run, if you will, versus, that. But I like the fact that if you say you're going to do a run of X, that's what it is. So, well, so it takes you a day, I'll say a day to carve out the block. When you do watercolor to it, how long does that process take you? I mean, after all these years of practice, I'm going to guess you're fairly speedy, but
probably about an hour.
Really? Both of your answers have surprised me. They both are faster than I anticipated, to be honest. And I don't know why. This is just my speculation. Fascinating. And I interest now that you say that. it is something about the block print that's bold versus
Mm-hmm.
a watercolor is more of um,
Mm-hmm.
a subtle thing. I hadn't. So that's where I struggle. I don't articulate well. So you've done these as cards, calendars, and puzzles. What prompted you to do puzzles?
That's not my decision at all. Pomegranate is a very successful publisher, and they have editors and art, graphic designers
Mhm.
who I send the art to, and if they like it, they decide what they want to do with it. And now, of course, they ask me first, is it okay? But
Right.
they do. During the pandemic, they did amazingly with puzzles, as you can probably
Right.
imagine.
Right.
And it's a big moneymaker for them. It's very successful for them. So this was the first one that they did of mine, and I was really excited. I thought it was great. So
Did
they decide what they're going to do with my art.
did they send you one and did you put it together?
Yes, they've sent me one, but you know, I'm a little bit too impatient to really get into a puzzle. And thankfully, I believe this one's only 500 pieces. There's no way I'm ever going to look at anything more than 500 pieces.
I'm laughing for a number of reasons.
Really?
I, as you, I'm too impatient, but there's a relatively well-known librarian in the Seattle area that I'm sure you know. You may know her personally. You know the name Nancy Pearl.
Oh, yeah. I don't know her personally, but
So
very
that's
familiar.
Nancy was a guest on the show, and we were talking, and I follow her on social media, and it's weekly. It's at least once a week. She's publishing a photograph of 1,000+ piece jigsaw puzzle that she's completed.
Oh,
She's ready to send it off to
gosh.
somebody. So that's her thing. She does jigsaw
She
puzzles.
probably listens to audiobooks while she's
She
doing it.
does.
Yeah,
That's
I'm
exactly right.
sure.
She
She could
does.
not read all those books and do 1,000-piece
Oh,
puzzles.
I just crack up because you're saying you're impatient. I'm laughing because I am as well. And then there's this other person that that I've talked to it that you're aware of that is that's their thing.
Yeah.
So this is interesting. So as an artist, now I'm looking at your Mount Rainier and is that sub sub
Subalpine
yeah,
firs.
subalpine. Sorry, I thought that was a typo. The note card, lovely note card.
Hmm.
Um, what have they ever said to you? Hey, we want to take this art and do something, and you said, "Oh, I don't really like that idea."
No, because they're wonderful. They do beautiful work.
Okay,
And, among publishers, card publishers, their royalty system is so fair and so generous.
okay,
I'm excited. The other thing is not everybody can afford to buy a print. And the wonderful thing about them, and you mentioned this earlier in our conversation, this brings art to everybody. This is
hmm
affordable. People can buy this and enjoy art. And they publish contemporary artists, but they also publish many really good artists from the past.
hmm
There's no way you're going to want to, not going to be able to buy a painting by Monet and they publish things like that. So
right.
it's great.
That's awesome. So walk me through. I had no idea we'd go this direction. That's the beauty of the show. But walk me through this note card, this Mount Rainier note card. You submitted the art. Did they like say, hey, we're looking for ideas, or what do you have? How does one go about submitting? How did you go about submitting the art, and what's the
Um,
process like with them?
um, because I have a really long standing relationship with them, probably, 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
I just do art. I send it to them and I don't do anything. And this is how they operate. If they like it, they publish it. If they don't, it goes in my closet with all the things that haven't sold. I mean, hopefully I'll offer it for sale at some point, but
Right.
I just do what I'm inspired to do.
Okay.
It's a pretty nice thing. I mean, that's one of the pleasures of being an artist. You can sometimes just do what you feel like doing. And I love Mount Rainier. And one of my books is Mount Rainier, an artist tour.
Mm-hmm.
And I've spent many, many days at Mount Rainier, and I just love it. And so that's inspiring to me. So I do things that inspire me, and it's real hard for me to do. Like sometimes people ask me to do a commission,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not crazy about that because it doesn't mean anything personally to me. And I've only done a few because
Okay.
I just don't really enjoy it very much.
I want to go back to when you moved. So did you grow up in Minnesota? Did you grow up in that area?
Uh, well, my dad was in the military, so we moved around quite a bit. And one place we lived for several different times was Denver. And I just got a real love for the mountains living in
Okay.
Denver. So moving to Seattle was just so easy for me.
So what was it like when you saw Rainier for the first time?
Oh my gosh. I can't even tell you. I remember driving up above the Nisqually, that really steep incline as you're going up towards Paradise. And
Mm-hmm.
I just remember my jaw dropped. I could not believe how big it was. And I still feel that way every time I go there. I can't believe how big it is. It floors me. So, yeah.
So I grew up in the Tacoma area my entire life. I
Uh-huh.
grew up as a child in the Tacoma area. And so
Mm-hmm.
Rainier was always, if it wasn't
Mm-hmm.
cloudy, Rainier was always present.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went to college in Ellensburg, and
Mm-hmm.
you don't see the mountain there.
Mm-hmm.
Never really paid any attention to that.
Mm-hmm.
I, after college, moved to Seattle, saw the mountain on occasion, not like you do when you're down south. I have friends that live in the Bonnie Lake area where it seems like the
Mm.
mountain's just popping up out of their
Oh, it's
backyard.
amazing. Yeah.
So all of this, so the mountain's been part of my life for a long, long time. And when we moved to Wenatchee, my mother and father moved with us over here, and my mother misses the mountain terribly because her entire life up until 2017 had been in the Tacoma area, where the
Mm-hmm.
mountain is,
Mm-hmm.
it's present. And I don't miss it,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm aware of it not being here. But
Yeah.
when I go down, what I do find to be really, really odd is when you see the mountain from Yakima.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't look like, it's like, what mountain is that? It's
Yeah.
weird to me. It's Rainier, but it's not
Yeah.
Rainier.
Yeah, I
And
know.
it's so, when you go up to it, like I went over Chinook Pass for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
Have you traveled
Yep.
Chinook?
Oh, yeah.
Beautiful pass.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't prepared for all the cars stopped along the side of the road for the photo ops. I was like, what's going on here? And I was like, what happened? But it is such a magnificent it's just amazing. It's just,
Mm-hmm.
I think we take it for granted. I know I do. Is what I guess in a long-winded way I'm trying to say. I've taken the
Mm-hmm.
mountain for granted. And as an artist, it probably provides you with never-ending content.
You're right. I need to tell you that my birthday is coming up this weekend, and I have this tradition. I don't always manage it, but I go to Mount Rainier somewhere near my birthday.
Okay.
And it just means so much to me. And the fall color can be really spectacular at Paradise, but I may go up to Sunrise. Sometimes there are some really neat plants up there that I love that turn great colors. There's one called knotweed. One is blooming in the summer. It doesn't look like much at all, but when it turns red in the fall, it's pretty stunning. So I haven't decided which one I'm going to, which place, but what you said about the mountain and kind of missing your mom, missing it. When I used to fly back to Minnesota to see my family that still lives there, when we would fly back and we'd fly by Rainier, I would just have this great feeling of relief. I'm home, and there's the mountain, and I'm home. And that was really cool.
It's interesting, isn't it? How it's so,
Yeah.
it's so, I don't know. I'm struggling with word. And I'm the host of the show. I better not, but I do think it's magnificent. It is wonderful, and we're lucky to have it. we're also lucky to have artists that, capture it in, creative ways of sharing it.
Scott, I just wanted to say one thing. In all my peregrinations around the mountain, I realized that it does look different from almost every angle. So, from Tacoma, it looks real different than it does from Seattle. And
Right.
then as you drive south towards Olympia, it really starts to look strange because you can see the different crests on the mountain. And so it's fascinating. It's so big that it does look different from different perspectives.
And if you go around to the Yakima and look at it that way, it doesn't look like the same mountain at all. It really, to me, I have to remind myself that's Rainier. I mean, it's very, very interesting. Now, as you get closer to it up from that way, you're like, okay, yeah, it's Rainier. But when you're in the Yakima area, looking west at the mountain, it does look very, very different. So we've meandered a long way around. I want you to spend some time with me now on the trees of the West. Now, there's a thing on this show that we don't talk about certain places like Oregon. But I'll allow it. I've been allowing it more. I've been trying to be more inclusive lately and include Oregon and all of that because of the Pacific Northwest. But walk me through, how long was this book in the making? I mean, you said you had the artwork. So what's maybe the earliest piece in this book?
That's a really good question. Wow. Oh boy. I don't know, Scott. I can't even remember because I've been drawing and sketching these things for so long, but maybe something. No, I don't really know. I don't know. I cannot remember.
But you could have made something up, by the way. You could.
Well, I could have, but one thing I wanted to say is, when I started hiking in Washington in my 20s, I started noticing how beautiful and strange the mountains or the trees up in the mountains are. They form these very strange shapes. They call it Krummholz. It's a German word, mean crooked stick or, something to that effect. But they almost look like bonsai, Japanese garden trees. And I just got fascinated with them. And I think that's when I started looking at trees. So probably there's something in the book that is, from an alpine view.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you have, this is akin to me asking, do you have a favorite child? But do you have a favorite medium to work in?
Well, excuse me. My first medium was watercolor, and I really, really like it. Still love it. Yeah.
I'm looking, and I'm going to show you. No one can see this, but this is the page I've currently flipped to.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. You can see it done two different ways, right?
And that's what stopped me here as I'm flipping through, is that the two different, the same basic image, two different styles. Can you, so Mountain Hemlock and Mount Baker is so for the audience, let's give them the verbal storytelling here. Walk me through which one came first, the watercolor or the block print?
The watercolor.
Watercolor came first. And when you did this watercolor, were you actually present here, or did you sketch this out and then come back to the studio?
Yeah.
Walk me through this.
That's a great question. Just a minute, Scott, because I'm going to have to clear my throat. Okay. I'm getting scratchy. This happens sometimes when I teach, if I talk too much. Okay. I would be lost without my camera, and I'm not a professional photographer, but I take a lot of pictures when I'm out in the field. Sometimes I sketch. This particular one, no, I took a picture.
Okay.
And I was fascinated by the growth habit of this mountain hemlock, because they do weird things up in the mountains. Sometimes the snow will cause them to bend down, and then they propagate themselves with a form called layering, where it's kind of like they set down roots where the tree bent down. Anyway, I've done various versions of this. I did an etching of it too, which is in the book. That one's one of my favorites. But yeah, the watercolor I started with because I really liked the image. And then I thought, this one would make a really good block print. So that's why I did both. And I did that. I have done that with several things. And sometimes when I'm at a loss, like, gee, what should I do now? I know people like the block prints. I'll just find a watercolor that I've done and I'd go, this could make a really good block print. So
what criteria do you use to take something that was a watercolor and then you go, this would make a good block print?
That is a very, very good question, because when I teach the block printing, people ask me, well, what's a good subject? What should I do? And what I think is something with really strong lines, like very emphatic. And then if it has bright color, that's a real plus too. So here the bright color was the meadow, the meadow nearby. So those two things really make a good print.
And I'm going to skip through the desert stuff because that's not what we do have desert here, but
Yeah. Well, you guys live really close to it. I spent a lot of time this spring over there because I'm researching my new book, Wildflowers. I've discovered some really great places, and I'm coming back next spring because I love it over there.
Well, spill the tea. Where did you find over here that you liked?
Well, I don't know if I want to share that information.
Oh, all right.
There's a couple of really good guidebooks published by mountaineers, and they have many great suggestions of where to go. And there's a really cool website called Wildflowers of the Pacific Northwest. It's really neat because they're bullets in all these possible places, and they tell you this is in bloom, this is over, this is coming up. I use that a lot in my research. Yeah.
Where we live, we're physically close to what's called the Sage Hills Trail.
Oh yeah, I was there. It was amazing.
And when the flowers are in bloom, the parking around here is, I feel like I'm living next to a trailhead of epic proportions.
Sure.
But it's a wonderful little. Well, there's a pretty big climate in my end of it. But I didn't realize how far it goes north from where we are, up to Horsehead Lake. It's quite lovely. So you're coming out. So you're going to. So you already said this. So I don't think I'm saying anything I shouldn't say publicly. So you're coming out with there will be another book coming out, and it'll be on wildflowers.
Yeah, and it's going to be a companion volume to Trees of the West and Birds of the West, and I'm having a lot of fun with it and discovering, as I just said, some really beautiful things in Washington that, I had no idea. There was one place I was over in your neck of the woods where I discovered a cactus, a hedgehog cactus, which shocked me. I mean, it looked like something that should be growing in California, So it's exciting to me because it doesn't matter how old you are, how long you've been in the state, you are always going to find something new that you didn't even know existed. And I find that really exciting.
Well, the geography of the state is incredibly diverse.
You're right. Yeah.
One thing. So have you ever been to, you've been to Leavenworth, right? You've been.
Yeah.
Okay. You've been to Leavenworth. Have you ever gone on a hike up into the Enchantments?
Yes, I did years ago. It's absolutely marvelous.
So when I first started this show, I had a guest on from a geology professor from Central Washington University. Very new to doing this, and I was very nervous. And he had a show on PBS. He's very, very comfortable, speaking and presenting.
I think I know who you're talking about because I saw his show.
Nick Zentner.
Yeah.
So Nick Zentner comes on, and I've told this story before. Well, I'll share it with you right now. So back then, I reached out to him about being a guest, and he writes back, "Sure, when." I mean, it was literally like, "Sure, when." And I said, "How about, I'm making this up, Tuesday at 9 a.m. Sure, send me the link. Tuesday at 9 a.m. He pops on my screen like you did this morning. Hey, and I go, hi. And he goes, hi, let's go. And that was it. He was ready to
Mhm.
roll. And I'm like, so that was before I ever had these introductory phone calls with a guest to kind of, okay.
Yeah.
And I had like 30 seconds and I was like, okay, hang on, Scott, this is going to be interesting. And he took off and he's entertaining. It was great.
Mhm.
And he made a statement and I went, whoa, wait, stop. I go, you're telling me blah, blah, blah. And he goes, oh, you're paying attention. And I just laughed because I think he was setting me up with this. So this is something that you said no matter how long you've lived here. I never knew this before. The rocks in the enchantments. Do you know where
Mhm.
they came from?
I do not know. Tell me.
Those rocks, I guess there's ways for geologists to tag them
Mhm.
using scientific methods that escape me.
Mhm.
Those rocks originated basically in Baja California
Wow.
and have
Neat.
migrated through the millennia
Mhm.
to where they are now and up into Canada.
Cool.
I think of a mountain and I think of it as being the ultimate permanent thing, right? It's like it's
Mhm.
there, it's not going anywhere. Well, that's
Mhm.
not true.
Mhm.
And these rocks started their existence in what we call Baja California.
Great.
And I'm
Very
like,
cool.
and here they are in Washington State or, Oregon in
Mhm.
some capacity and British Columbia and all this. It's just fascinating to
Mhm.
me. So yes, you can find pretty much anything here in this state from a geology standpoint. And there's always something. Our tagline is there's always more to explore. And there is,
Mhm.
there's just so much more to do and to uncover and see. And I love the fact that you're um, still finding those things too.
One thing about the enchantments, there's a beautiful tree there, which you're probably aware of, the subalpine larch.
Mm-hmm.
And they also grow up at Washington Pass near Liberty Bell.
Mm-hmm.
And I've taught classes many times for the North Cascades Institute. And one of my favorite things we do is when we're there in the fall, we go up to Washington Pass and we paint the larches when they turn gold. And people don't know that this is a very unique species that really does not extend much beyond these two areas we just mentioned. And they're stunning, just
I did not
stunning.
realize that they were in that specialized of a location. That's
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
So you got a new book. Do you have a approximate ETA of when?
Um, I think it's going to be a couple of years
Okay,
yet.
okay,
Yeah.
a couple of years, and you're teaching classes.
Hmm.
So I'm going to shift into a couple of questions that I kind of, I always ask guests. Number one, so you live in the Seattle area
Hmm.
and you disclosed to me, and we're still friends, that you're not a coffee fan, but you drink tea. And that's okay. But if I'm coming over to Seattle, I drink coffee wherever I go. It's a must.
Hmm.
It's almost like it's the thing that I do.
Hmm.
Where, if you and I were going to meet for a cup of coffee or a cup of tea, where would you recommend we go?
Oh, I think we'd go to Zoka.
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 Mm-hmm.
They've got a couple of locations in Seattle, and there's one near me, and I've met friends there for tea and coffee a number of times.
Okay. And since you're a tea drinker and it's a coffee shop, how is the tea experience there? And it's okay to say it's not the best. It's
No,
okay.
it's very, very fine.
It's very fun.
Very fine.
Now, if I were going to play along and say, no, let's just go for tea, because I enjoy tea as well. My preference is coffee. But if we we're going to go for tea, is there a great place to go for tea in your area?
You know, I have to tell you, Scott, that I haven't gone out for tea. People who are true connoisseurs drink Japanese teas, and uh, I know a guy who imports tea, but
Mm-hmm.
I have never become a real connoisseur of it, so I couldn't really tell you that.
Okay, so when I ask a person what their coffee drink of choice is, like
Hmm.
mine is just I enjoy black coffee.
Hmm.
I so what tea do you enjoy?
Well, I like English breakfast, Irish breakfast, sometimes Earl Grey, and I drink it like the Brits do. I like tea. I like my tea with a little bit of milk and honey.
Okay. What is the difference between English and Irish breakfast?
I think the Irish breakfast might have a little more green tea in it.
Okay.
I guess that kind of follows, doesn't it?
It
It makes
does actually.
sense.
It does. Yeah. Now that you say
The
that, that actually,
Emerald Isle.
right. No, that does. That makes sense. All right. And since I'm probably going to show up around lunchtime,
Hmm.
where's a great place for lunch in that part of
Okay,
Seattle?
I've got a new favorite.
Okay.
It's the El Camion food truck on Sandpoint Way. It's Mexican food, really good, and super inexpensive.
I was not seeing that one. Really?
Yeah, it's really good. I recommend it.
You've thrown me. So what would you order? What have you tried? And share more.
Um, I like their chicken enchiladas, and their guacamole is amazing. And they have like 20, well, it's not 20. They probably got about 6 different little salsas,
Uh-huh.
different flavors, chipotle, um, super hot,
Do you like, okay, so
green
do
sauce,
you like heat? Do you like
Yeah, I like
spicy?
it.
You
Yes, I
do.
like it. Hmm.
I'm kind of a wimp.
Okay.
I'm kind of, I mean, my son is, I mean, I think he just buys hot sauce that sounds disgusting just to just say that,
I know
I
they're
drank
crazy.
gasoline, Dad. Look at me, but I appreciate flavor, so I can take more. I don't like heat for the sake of heat. If it's got flavor to it,
Yeah,
I will
sure.
endure it a little bit more.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So as we're going to wrap this up, I've got 2 questions. And I prepped you that there was going to be one question I wouldn't disclose. So
Hmm.
I'm going to give you the other question first. I'm going to make you wait a little longer. So, well, actually, I have 3 questions for you. Question number 1 is your teaching schedule.
Hmm.
Where do you normally teach? How often are you teaching? And where can people find out more about that?
Um, I will be teaching a class on Zoom for the North Cascades Institute. Perhaps you heard about the fire, the sourdough fire up on
Yes.
Highway 20. Unfortunately, it kind of threw a wrench into their class programming. So, I had planned to do a fall watercolor class for them in
Mhm.
October, but we we decided that we couldn't do in-person classes, so I'm going to do an online class for them on, I think it's October 14th.
Okay.
But they'll have information on their website about it. But I put information on my website too. And one thing I will be doing too is I like doing library programs for local libraries where I bring materials for people to try things out. And
Oh,
so I may be at a few local libraries. Might be up at Darrington in October.
okay.
They're celebrating their remodel. And I don't know, I just like getting out there and meeting people from different parts
Right.
of the city and the state.
All right. Part 2 of that question is, if people want to find out more about you and about your art and your books, where would they be able to find out online?
They could come to my website, mollyhashimoto.com. And also, Pomegranate probably has a little info, and some Mountaineers books does
Okay.
too.
And we'll put links to all that in the show notes
Sure.
for you. Okay. So here's the question. You ready?
Hmm.
It's a very important question. Cake or pie, and why?
Mm. Pie. I make a pretty good crust from
Okay.
the joy of cooking,
Okay.
and I love boysenberries. Though I haven't made one yet. I discovered them at the farmer's market recently. But apple pie, I go to the U District Farmers Market, and Grouse Mountain, which grows their fruit over in Chelan,
Mm-hmm.
they're over here, and they bring this heirloom apple called Prairie Spy. It makes the best apple pie. You cannot believe how good it is.
Really?
Yeah.
Elaborate. Let's continue. See, I love this question because some people would still be debating with themselves. Like, it's they can't answer the question. So other people are like adamant, boom. And then the other
Adamant.
one,
I like that.
and what I've noticed about this is people are adamant about one or the other,
Hmm.
and the other one is absolutely horrible. Like, never. I will not do.
Oh,
And I think it's funny because it's not meant to be a, really
oh,
polarizing question. It's
yeah.
just meant to be kind of fun. But
Well, listen, I like cake a lot too. My daughter's a great baker. She
okay.
makes me for Mother's Day and my birthday, she makes some pretty fabulous cakes.
Okay.
So
But
it was a little hard for me. It was a
But
little
you answered
hard
quickly.
question.
You jumped firmly into the pie category really
Yeah, yeah,
quick.
yeah,
So tell me about these apples though, because I've not heard of them.
yeah.
And why do you feel that they make the best apple pie?
Well, I asked Scott. I'm pretty sure Scott is one of the co-owners of the orchard. I can't remember his last name, but it's Grouse Mountain.
Okay.
He's just a wonderful guy. It has the best produce. I asked him, I said, I love baking pies and I can't seem to find the perfect apple for pie. And he says, well, my wife says that the Prairie Spy, which he has there,
Right.
is the best. So I find out that he's bringing them around, third week of September. So I will definitely be buying some for a pie. And I can't really tell you, but I think what it is it's both, it cooks down enough. Like say you use a Granny Smith, they're too crisp, they're too hard.
Mm-hmm.
You need something that's going to cook down, has a little bit of a bite, but it's also sweet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair. So with the apple pie, are you a fan of, this is where it gets, but like some people like to put cheddar cheese on. Are you a fan of cheese on them?
No.
Okay.
No.
Ice cream?
Sure.
You'll do
Vanilla
ice cream?
ice cream? Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's no wrong answers here. That's the thing. There's no wrong answers here. But I am amazed. I am amazed at people's, emphatic nature of their answers sometimes.
Yes.
Yours is more like, well, I prefer pie, but cake's good too. So if it's a cake, what's your go-to cake? Like if it was your birthday and your daughter said, "Hey, Mom, I'm gonna bake a cake for you. What do you want? Any cake." What would you ask your daughter?
Well, it's funny you should ask that question because I just wrote her yesterday, emailed her and told her Black Forest cake is what I want. If you feel like you want to make it, I'd love
this year
it.
it's a Black Forest cake. That's
yeah.
Okay. All right. That's solid. It's really solid. I like that. Okay. Last question, I promise you. What didn't I ask you that I should have? What didn't we cover that you would like to bring up?
Oh, that's a really good question, Scott. I think you did cover everything. Really, I'm really pleased at all the questions you asked me. I guess the only thing maybe that I'd want to say to people is going outside and looking at things like trees, flowers, birds. I see it as a way to establish some priorities in your life that will make you happier. And I'd really like to say that. And I think when you start making art about these things, you begin to look at them even more closely and you take even more pleasure from it.
Okay. I think we can end right there.
Okay. Thank you so much, Scott.
Thank you. That was wonderful. Hope you enjoyed the show. You can reach me on Twitter at ExploreWaState. I'd love to hear your comments. You can also visit our website at explorewashingtonstate.com. If you know anyone who would like the show, it'd be amazing if you'd share the show with them. This is the biggest way that we grow this show. Good old word of mouth. I'm glad you were here with me today, and I hope to have you listening to the next episode. See you then.